Ladies and gentlemen, this is our main event.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Throwing Jabs Podcast. I'm your host, Big Jace, joined as always by my man, Joe Aguirre and Jared Jones. And we got a jam-packed show. We're going to recap last week's fights, the big grandpa fight between Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. And then we got some current events, even some breaking news, and obviously who you got, and we're previewing this week's fights. But let's start off in the UFC and Anthony Smith scores a first-round submission victory of Devin Clark via triangle choke. There it is, right there. Going to kick it to you, Jared. What do you think of the fight? And does this, from Anthony Smith's performance, can he get back to the top of the middleweight ladder or light heavyweight ladder, I mean?
Well, sure, I guess. I mean, he took John Jones a distance, beat Gustafsson by submission. But I'd really say the Teixeira fight was the beginning of the end for this guy. And a title shot's a really, really tough thing for me to envision him beating those guys in front of him and getting there. I don't know, Joe. I kind of doubt it.
Look, it was a good win for him. I was a little concerned with the matchup. He went out and took care of business really quick, but you're supposed to beat guys like this and quick. They call Anthony Smith Lionheart, and there's a reason for that, because he gets his brains beaten in by the best of the best. Glover Teixeira, John Jones, Thiago Santos. Glover literally knocked Anthony Smith's teeth out during the fight. If you Google that, you'll die laughing at that.
Oh, yeah.
He literally said to his corner, my teeth are falling out of my mouth during the fight. And they were like, hey, listen, stop getting punched in the face. I'm going to tell you a story that I think sums up Anthony Smith and his prospects for this division. Last April, a 21-year-old man walked through his garage door and into his home, an intruder, looking to take stuff. Smith grabbed the guy, beat the crap out of him for 5 minutes. His wife called the cops. Cops showed up. Turns out this intruder happened to be a former high school wrestler. Now, mind you, hadn't wrestled in a few years. He's out of high school, and he's a delinquent robber. Anyway, Lionheart told the cops when they got there that he fought this dude for 5 minutes and gave him all he had. Knees, elbows, had the guy in the ground, and he couldn't take him out. A 21-year-old intruder in your home. You're an MMA fighter, and you didn't rip his throat. I mean, what? That guy would have been dead at my house. How you beating Jan Blachowicz? How you going to beat Dominic Reyes? How are you going to beat those guys? Dude, an intruder was coming into your house, and you were like, you held him off is all you could do?
Well, and he's obviously not making great life choices if he's invading homes. Right. He's not training. He's not in tip-top shape. Like you said, he's a couple years out of high school, so his wrestling career is probably all you had. Yeah.
He took all I had.
I would struggle to say that. You know, I used to have trouble when I'd rap. I'd battle people, and they'd say, "This is my best verse. This is the illest thing I ever wrote." Because now I'm gonna judge everything else based on that. I'm not sure I gave that guy all I had. You don't want to say that unless you're at the top of the game. 21-year-old intruder, 3 years out of high school wrestling is not the guy you want to say that about. Exactly. What the hell are you going to do with these guys at the top of the division if this guy's giving you run?
Look, Anthony Smith can stay around this division for as long as he could beat guys like Devin Clark. And when guys like Devin Clark start beating him and they move up, then Anthony Smith drops out. And, you know, I think he's already got 16 losses in his career. I don't know how many more times he's going to lose to a big name. Or in the case of John Jones, go the distance with a great fighter, but winning great fights, it's just not in his wheelhouse, unfortunately. But it was a good fight, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So there's that.
he is now a gatekeeper. And at first, I thought he would be a gatekeeper to the championship. Now he's just a gatekeeper to the upper echelon. He's a gatekeeper for that top 5 in that division. If you can beat him, then you can get another fight that might get you to a championship. But, yeah, and if this is where he's happy being, sure, continue to fight. But if not, he's great on the mic. He does the pre-fight show. He does the post-fight show. Oh, yeah. Go retire. Go get a paycheck from ESPN. You'll be all set. You're good at that stuff. So, I mean, I'm not saying he should retire. I'm sure he's got a lot left in the tank, but he's got other options rather than
but
just
do you
fighting.
see a time
Well, I know a
shot?
21-year-old wrestler who would say he doesn't have a lot left in the tank.
Oh, what was that, Jared?
Well, do you think there's a path to the light heavyweight champ to a title shot?
No. Like
I think
maybe.
Joe hit the nail on the head when he said he'll be able to hang out just as long as he can beat guys like Devin Clark. As long as he can win fights like that and be the gatekeeper, like you said, Jace. Yeah, I think we're all pretty much in the same boat here.
And I think you're right too, Jace. I mean, I think you beat Anthony Smith, and then you have to beat Dominic Reyes to get to the top now. You know what I mean? I definitely agree with you that he's not even the step to the top. He's the step to the step to get to the top. So tough spot to be in if you're him.
Yep. And you want to know a real tough spot to be in? In the middle of this, Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. go the distance in their 8-round exhibition bout that ended in a draw. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I did not watch this fight live. I went back and watched it. My friends were all like, what? How are you not going to watch this? This is the first time in your lifetime you're going to be able to see Mike Tyson fight live. And I said what I said at the start of the show. This is a grandpa fight. If I want to see 2 grandpas fight, I'll go to the old folks' home down the street. There's good college football on. I'm going to watch that. And for what it was a good fight. But what'd you guys think of the fight? And who did you have winning the fight, Jared?
I thought Tyson won the fight. Effective aggression. I thought Roy was going away. I thought Roy did a real good job of not getting knocked out. You know, landing a few punches, then hugging, a la Floyd toward the end of his career. Touch and go, and then hold, and it's so frustrating if you're Tyson. It's like watching a striker wrestle, that it's just like, get up and fight the guy. You know, and that's not what was going to happen, which, okay. I'm okay with that. They're both in their 50s. But I think at the end of fights, I always like to judge it by which guy I would have rather been. And there wasn't a time in that fight I would have rather been Roy than Mike.
Yeah. I love Roy Jones Jr. I've spoken about him glowingly. And the Roy Jones Jr. I'm talking about, generally speaking, is pre-2005. When I talk about Roy Jones Jr. and his greatness, I never mean anything after 2005.
Not
just
in his 50s?
Not in his 50s.
Okay.
So look, if you're Roy Jones didn't win any rounds of that fight. That was 8-0. And they were clearly pulling punches. This was an exhibition, and they treated it as much. Okay. So if you're saying who won the fight, well, Mike Tyson did, clearly. But who won the fight? Honestly, this generation of kids that are out there right now playing soccer, that we always make fun of, because giving this or calling this fight a draw, to me, was the ultimate participation trophy event. Mm-hmm. Hey, Roy, thanks for coming out. You didn't lose. We're going to say this was a split, and you both go home winners. Get out of here with that crap. I mean, we talk about the pussification of American kids. These are 2 big boys. These are 2 champions. If you told Roy, you scored 0 points tonight. You really didn't do anything in this fight tonight. And congratulations on not getting killed like Nate Robinson did. Well, R.I.P. to Nate, by the way. That was a sad passing over the weekend. He's still knocked out, laying by the ring, from what I understand. It's shocking. And, here, let me tell you another thing. Let me tell you another thing, and why I think this is horrible for boxing. My daughter doesn't know who Roy Jones Jr. is. She knows Mike Tyson because he was in the Hangover movie. She knows who the Paul brothers are, and she knows Nate Robinson, not the basketball player from the Knicks, but the fighter. And I think that's really sad. That when I say boxer, my daughters are like, "Oh, the YouTube guys."
This isn't a place this isn't a spot, though. It's because it's more entertaining. It's more entertaining. You tell me right now, today, John McEnroe's going to fight Jimmy Connors. And it will get more publicity and better ratings than any of their tennis matches ever in history. Give me Roddick versus Nadal in a fist fight. We'll watch it. There's something here. We just have to do it right. I agree with all those other points, except that this is horrible for boxing. For all that participation BS, just don't declare a winner. A la Scraps. Just don't declare a winner. Just don't say who won at the end. And everybody will walk away going, yeah, Tyson, yeah, Roy did a good job surviving, but Tyson won the fight. And we'll all know that. And we don't have to go about calling it a draw because somebody who doesn't know how to judge a fight was judging the fight. 3 people who've never judged a fight before in their life, who probably have personal relationships with both of those guys. That's a horrible idea. So for all that, just don't judge it. No winner.
You're right.
Well, right. Look, they didn't even have real judges there. There weren't even real judges at this fight. I mean, again, this was a participation event. This was look, and I'll tell you.
Shout out to my boy Chad Dawson who got it right.
When the fight started and I watched these guys come out, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. The fighting wasn't great. The fighting in the fight wasn't great. And the travesty to me, Jared, is that Bud Crawford is struggling to make money and to get his name out there. Meanwhile, you got this Jake Paul idiot out there. I mean, that's where my problem is. And again, we've talked about this, right? The idea anybody could do it, but then do it right.
Can we force the money to the undercard?
You correct. Do it right.
I'm asking you, can we force the money to the under? Because that's what I would
do whatever you want. If
you're running it. I would have scraps and kids who have no idea what they're doing except for their couple weeks of training, and then you move up to Nate Robinson types, and then you move up to Jake Paul types, and then you move up to Tyson and Roy types, and then you move up to Bud Crawford as the main event, and people know this is the guy that's fighting to be the greatest fighter in the world. This is the guy who would smash everybody on the undercard. And that's the only way they're going to know that, because and it means we have to move the money to the undercard. The people that are getting the better ratings are not going to be the main event, and I don't think that can happen. So we're going to ride with or without this wave. And right now, entertainment fighting is swallowing boxing.
Yeah,
and
you're
if
right.
We're going to save our sport, this is the time to do it. We have to embrace the entertainment side. The fact that give me a sport, name me a sport, and name me 2 guys. You don't want to see Dak Prescott heal up and have a fist fight with Daniel Jones? What do you want to see? 9-minute, 3-minute rounds of Daniel Jones versus Dak Prescott. 3 rounds or 3 hours of Cowboys versus Giants. You just clicked on it. You picked up your phone. You clicked on a video. You tapped it that second time like we all do to figure out how long the video is. You found out one of them lasted 6.5 minutes. Ooh, that means Dak Prescott knocked him out. And the other one is 3 hours when you do that little second tap. What are you going to sit there and watch? We're lying to ourselves if we say this isn't the most entertaining form of. So why is it not bigger than NFL? Because we didn't embrace this before. Let's embrace this and put the main event where it's supposed to go and put the money behind the sport.
Jared, I disagree with you. This is not what's best for boxing. The sport of boxing, not at all. The business of boxing, yes, maybe. the fact that we had, I joked that they were grandpas, but two of the best fighters of the past 20 years, 30 years, 40, almost 40.
They broke pay-per-view numbers. We can't ignore the numbers.
No, but the fact that they fought, even though they're grandpas, and the big story coming out of it was a YouTuber knocking out a former NBA player, a player playing for Ice Cube's 3-on-3 league. That's ridiculous.
Look
and
at the
then
numbers.
That stuff, yes, the numbers.
If we ignore this, it
but
will
when is it boxing and when is it WWE, Jared?
Separate it. So separate those things. There are levels to this. Show people the levels. This is beginner. This is amateur. This is professional. This is Legends League. And put them in the order on the card so that they fit that. Beginner, amateur, professional, legends, depending on who the draw is. But we're going to have to put the money on the undercard when we start doing that. Jake Paul is going to have to fight under those pro fighters before Badu Jack.
I don't know. I saw celebrities fighting before in celebrity deathmatch, and I thought it was much better done in claymation, if I'm being honest. If there would have been claymation Tyson versus claymation Roy Jones, that would have been a really good fight. You gotta had Mike talking for both of them for the narration part. It would have been awesome.
That's great.
I only don't like this. I think what Jay said is right. I mean, Jared, you're right. I mean, you can't ignore that. That's what the people want. If the people want it, you got to give it to them. It's good for the business of boxing. But when the heavy, when the welterweight champion is struggling to get, or it's fighting for free on ESPN while we're giving hundreds of millions of dollars away to not real boxers, it's not good for the sport of boxing. If it gets more people into boxing, that's a benefit, most certainly.
That's it. So make it available, make it as safe as you can, and make it for absolutely everybody. We've got to embrace the entertainment side of this. The fact that our highest, if two of us fought, any two, that's our highest rated show. I got a buddy named Ken Kaplan. He's ended up he's been very supportive of Scrub Scraps. He runs the New England Motorcycle Museum. Really nice spot up in Rockville. Hundreds and hundreds of old motorcycles. It's a beautiful place. Ken Kaplan is the guy's name. He's got his own show on the Discovery Channel. Where he like fixes bikes, and it's all about the motorcycle museum, right? And I was thinking about it the other day because he fully supports Scrub Scraps. The episode where he fought someone, reformed bike thief, turned beginners boxer, fights Kaplan America, episode 12. Are you his highest rated show? Anybody's highest rated show? Rosie O'Donnell versus Roseanne Barr. It'll break the records over their shows. People will watch it. We watch fights, so make a spot for it that it's safe. Get the people helmets, gloves. Don't declare a winner. Let them scrap. It's for everybody. And the biggest benefit of this. Now, this is what we haven't touched on yet, is the psychology. When I say at Scrub Scraps, we get the school shooters. Okay, we get the kids who don't have another outlet. When we open this up and make it for everyone, we're not just embracing the numbers and the entertainment value. We're embracing depressed, autistic, people with nowhere else to go. That kid that doesn't quite fit in on the football team could fight that other kid that doesn't quite fit in on the football team. And all of a sudden, they both have somewhere to go and somewhere to belong. We need to embrace the entertainment side of this for everyone and give that animalistic, savage outlet to the people who need it the most. It's not Jake Paul and Nate Robinson, and that is tragic. I agree that's tragic. But let's embrace the entertainment side so that we can open this up to the people that need it the most.
Well, now Jake Paul is talking about fighting Canelo Alvarez.
There's levels to this.
And
drunk.
Let's be honest. I mean, Alvarez might take the fight. He won't give Triple G a third fight, but he's like, Jake Paul. All right.
Interesting.
Why not?
He's not ignoring the numbers.
Well, sure. But again, to me, that's why we have to, if you're going to do this, it's got to get done right, because I think all respect to actual boxer and boxing needs to be shown here. You know, I'm a really good wiffle ball player. That doesn't mean I should be facing Aroldis Chapman in the bottom of the 9th inning. I mean, I don't belong there.
And for some people, for some reason, people understand that when it comes to nobody was watching Michael Jordan play and going, you know, if I got a 1-on-1 to 3, maybe I hit a few shots, you know, but would you go around with Mike Tyson is something everybody talked about. And the tough guy at the party was like, 3 minutes, man. I'll just run from him, pump a few jabs out there. You know, for some reason, we can't say that we would lose a fight. People don't like to say that the same way they're like, I'd lose a tennis match to Andy Roddick, because I would. And you'd lose those fights too. And if we open it up to everybody, they start to recognize that and respect the Canelo Alvarez's, because they've got the opportunity to do it themselves.
That's not true, though, Jared. Like, there's the line between entertainment and the actual sport is blurred. Look at this. Jake Paul wants to fight MMA fighters, and he's saying he's going to embarrass them. Once you get those 2 wins, once you start feeling good about yourself, you think you can take on everyone, but it's not. Like, I've got friends that think that they're like 5'9", 160, and think they can tackle Gronk. That's just not true. Once you
I would just go low, Jace. I'd go low and I'd get him by his legs.
His ankles. Not like he's going to drive his knee into your face, bloody your mouth. No.
Coming at me with 4.5 speed, and I'm just going to lower my head. I'm going to take him right down.
There is entertainment. There is the actual sport. But once you start mixing this stuff together, the lines get blurred, and you get these delusions where this dumbass who's a YouTuber thinks he can fight Conor McGregor in a boxing match, thinks he can fight his brother, thinks he can fight Floyd and win.
So
I know Floyd wants that fight for sure. Floyd is definitely down for that fight.
Hey, besides no winner, here's another scrap rule. And whoever's making all these decisions, we should have a commission that's actually making all these decisions for the sport at large, and I should be on it. Here's another rule for scraps, intramural matches only. So you get somebody boxing both guys, and the next time Jake Paul gets in the ring, it's somebody on his level. It's somebody with the same trainer, and the trainer knows both guys and is saying, I think this is safe. And same for Nate Robinson, and same for Roy and Mike. And you don't get people killed out there, one of them thinking one thing and one of them thinking another, and they're on 2 completely different levels. Nate Robinson's a beginner. Jake Paul should be an amateur. He was better. That was a better and more skilled guy going up against somebody who was a basketball player. He was athletic and needed to fight another basketball player.
You're right. But, like, he beats a YouTuber's little brother and then a basketball player and thinks, hey, I can take on Conor McGregor. Hey, I can take on.
Think that as a fighter? You don't want him to think that.
I want him to have respect for the sport. I want him to have respect for the sport and realize, hey, I can do some great stuff with people on my level. But once it comes to the actual greats, no, I can't do that. Like, I was a great defensive tackle when I played high school football. Do I think I can go against Jeff Saturday? Do I think I can go get a sack on Peyton Manning if Jeff Saturday's there at center? No, I don't, because I'm realistic and I understand it.
Look, the idea that Bud and Katie Taylor don't have an audience, the fact that Valentina Shevchenko isn't the richest person in sports, in combat sports, is ridiculous. You know, here's the thing,
How do we
too.
get them there? How do we get
I don't know
there?
yet. But, you know, my other issue is, look, I haven't heard anybody say they wanted. People haven't been clamoring for years to see what would happen if Conor McGregor fought Manny Pacquiao. It's that thought's never occurred to me. It's never crossed my mind. I haven't heard the fans be like, you know what we should do? Take Manny Pacquiao and put him in a ring with Conor McGregor. This will be awesome. it's the curiosity is what's attracting people. And I who wants to fight not hoping to God Nate Robinson would knock him out? Who wants that fight not hoping for the opposite thing to happen? I haven't watched a Mayweather fight where I wasn't praying to God that he lost. I'm not interested in it because of the whole spectacle of it. Honestly, I watched to see if Roy Jones Jr. still had it, and he doesn't. Even close. Not even close. And you don't want to water down the product. And again, to have idiots like Jake Paul running around talking about like they could beat the top guys is stupid. Stay in your lane because, look, any idiot can do this. I did some MMA training. I told you this on the phone the other day, Jared. Spent weeks in the ring, in the gym, working and training, mostly just hitting bags and other pieces of equipment that this dude was holding. He wasn't just like, hey, why don't we just go spar on the mat? You've been here 2 days. I mean, come on. You got to train. You got to know what you're doing.
How long were you there? How long were you there?
I was there for 8 weeks. I trained, and by the end of the 8 weeks, just before the gym closed, unfortunately, I finally got my sparring, and it was good. It was really good stuff, and I enjoyed it, and it was worth it because all I wanted to do for 8 weeks when he told me he would spar me at the end was I just wanted to spar him. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, but
I had to put the work in first.
So what if he were training 30, 40 people and 10 to 12 of them were in your weight class, and at the end of the 8 weeks, you were like, okay, I'm ready. Do you think I'm ready? He was like, yeah, I think you're ready. And what do you think? And he was like, 10. And you actually sparred, had an event where your family showed up and you sparred somebody who was kind of on the same level you were. You'd have done that and people would have watched. And Will Brand would fight Jake Paul. He is not lying. I promise you.
No, seriously, then put Jake Paul in a ring with Canelo Alvarez. And if he survives 2 rounds, then he can fight every weekend on pay-per-view, headliner against anybody, and I promise I'll buy every single one of those fights.
I still feel like the answer's in the question. Any idiot can do this. Isn't a complaint. It's a business model.
Oh, I love it, and I agree with you. But on national television, when you have, dude, again,
but how do we fix it is the answer. How do we put the money into the right hands? We can't if they're not entertaining.
We promote the right fights. We promote the right fights with the idea that there's hey, if you want to try this, there's places you can go to do it.
Yes. There's scrub scraps. There isn't pay-per-view with 2 all-time greats in the world of boxing.
The more people want to see 2 people fight, the better ratings it's going to get, the more money it's going to make. Hey, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Remember the triangle we dealt with for Cuddle the Bear? Okay, how do we make it rewarding for the fighters? They want to make money.
But where do bum fights fall on this list? Because I've seen that on the internet, and I'll be honest, I've watched it. It's wrong. Dirty.
But you watched it.
I watched it, and I'll be honest, as soon as the fight started, I picked my bum. I picked him, and I was like, I hope this bum wins.
Can I be perfectly honest with you? For the first year and a half, for the first 8 events, Scrub Scraps was called bum fights. We thought it was funny. Let's just call it bum fights.
I think that's great.
And then as it started to take off, it was like, hey, we're going to need our own name. We should go Scrub Scraps. Yes.
More people to the sport.
That was perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect,
But boxing promoters still need to promote real boxers.
Yes.
Bob Arum's complaining about having to promote the greatest fighter of this generation in Bud Crawford, and instead we want to give money to Jake Logan Paul or whatever the hell his name is. Why?
So you guys understand because Jace went as far as he did as a defensive tackle in high school, because you did those 8 weeks of combat training. I had a few street fights, 13, 14 years old, and I knew that it was my destiny to beat every world champion that ever existed.
I sparred with Jared last summer.
It wasn't until I experienced it that I believed that there were those levels existed. Has Jake Paul experienced that in the gym? Has he sparred with a Canelo type yet? No. And I want him to believe that BS he's spewing right up until he does. And then he'll get humble like we all do at the gym. And don't turn into the things that we might if we had to be humbled somewhere else. Because that's where it happened. For me, it was parent, other parent, teacher, detention center, CO, cop, warden. I went right up the list and nobody could give me that thing. And then John Scully did it without throwing any punches. I went in for 5 rounds. I let the fury of an 18, 19-year-old with doing everything wrong and moving totally in the wrong direction out on him. And he probably landed more punches than I did and swung twice around. But it was exactly what I needed to believe, okay, there's levels to this. If this retired boxer, world champion level, elite fighter, but, retired boxer who's now a trainer, I can't get any ends with. I didn't know that. I thought if I let that fury out on anybody, they were going to fall over. 20 minutes later, he's like, hey, you want to roll out of the ring and breathe hard somewhere else? Because we got more training to do, me and the rest of the real fighters,
Jared and I sparred last summer. He taught me some stuff, put the gear on me, and we went at it, and we didn't go hard. I had the time of my life. I really enjoyed it. I remember telling Jared the first time Jared hit me pretty good, I remember everything slowed down, and I thought, I'm either going to start throwing wild haymakers, or I'm going to have to calm down and start watching his hands and anticipate when he's going to put one in my face. And everything slowed down. And other than when you hit me in the rib and it hurt for 6 weeks afterwards, Jared, I walked away thinking man, this is great. But have you noticed I haven't asked you for a rematch yet? And have you noticed I haven't suggested I can now duke it out with Conor McGregor or an actual boxer? That Conor McGregor's not even one of those either.
Two things. One, that's you have a very unique story when it comes to scraps. That body shot is very, very unique. Normally, people walk away without that punch having been landed, especially from me. And two, you're talking about that choice point. I always like.
I'm very bony. You can't tell from how I look.
I didn't know.
I'm very bony in the rib area. Very, very bony.
So well. So you're talking about that choice point, though, where you're like, I'm going to rely on my instincts and fire off on this guy, or I'm going to have more calculated responses that have more positive effects. Right? And isn't that what we need in life? Oh, this thing happened to me. I'm just going to react to it, or I'm going to... That should say fought. That's my man. That's my man.
William, did he get you in that rib, man? That rib shot, I'm telling you.
That kid, I'll tell you what, that was a Rocky 1 type of fight. My first fight with Will Brand. We went 8 3-minute rounds, and he told me before the fight, it was scraps 2 or 3 maybe. So it was real early. We didn't tape it. But I remember, attention levels were really high that day. And I remember he walked over to me and was like, hey, Jared, I want to see what you have. Really show me how good you are. Don't hold back. I don't maybe want flurries. Don't land 2, 3, 4 of those big shots if you rock me. But if you can pop and land your best shot, I want to know what your best shots feel like. And man, that kid took as many of my best shots as anybody else. His chin is as serious as we've had in scraps. And he turned into kind of a gatekeeper. But I'll tell you what, I won. I got to call Dizzle out. Dizzle is the greatest ref we've had and one of the better trainers, man. And he's in my corner for this fight. And he comes over, he's with the rag, the water and stuff. And he's like, Jay, man, you won every round, all 7 rounds. You won this going away. Good jab. You hit him with bed shots. You're rocking him every round, man. So just keep doing what you're doing. And I walked out there like, psh, I got this. Will tagged me in the last round. It was like the first 30 to 45 seconds of the 8th round is the only part he really got ends on me since the first round when we were feeling each other out. And he pegged me like I had to figure out I was still in a fight. But at the end of the fight, I say it was Rocky-esque because nobody was there with the winner. Everybody at the end was like, oh my God, Will, your chin, your toughness. Like, even me, I was in awe that it went to decision with some of the shots I hit this kid with. Yeah, and everybody was talking about Will at the end of the fight, being walking through it, weathering the storm.
That's awesome.
Jake Paul spars with Ryan Garcia, the 135-pound
so he knows.
Lightweight. And Jake Paul is 190 pounds. Of course he knows. Look, he's a YouTuber, and it's a game. This is a big game for him. And that's my other issue with this. And I honestly, Jared, I'd almost be a little concerned about his safety. Because I think when you're completely disillusioned, like Deontay Wilder, thinking he could beat Fury in this lifetime, you're setting yourself up for, I don't think just massive disappointment, but you could really put yourself in jeopardy there. I think he needs to really get into a ring with another guy who weighs 190 pounds who's boxed before. And if you still feel like this is for you, Jake, then go for it. But do yourself the favor first. Get hit by what you would get hit with in a real fight, and then tell us how great you are. Maybe he is. Maybe we just don't know. Jake Paul's the next great fighter of all time. It's the sad thing. I don't think we even need to talk about that Nate Robinson fight, but my kids and their friends now think that the greatest knockout artist of this generation is Jake Paul.
Oh yeah,
that's a problem.
Yeah, well, you take
Spar Usyk, and then let's talk.
Yeah.
There you go. And then tell me that you can fight with the big boys.
Yeah, fight Artur Beterbiev. Fight Beterbiev. Spar a couple rounds with Artur and see what happens.
Listen.
Yeah, but hey, if you have scrub scraps, USA Boxing, professional, right? It takes some of that away. And then beginners are intramural matches only. They have to have the same trainer. And you have somebody telling Jake Paul, okay, well, I have these guys that you're not ready for. These guys you're not ready for. And this guy over here is who you should fight next. That's a good matchup for you. You might win, you might lose. It's a good matchup. And for the trainer, let me tell you, it happens really fast that you develop a personal relationship with the person you're training. It's one of the things I love. You don't have to say any words. You wrap their wrists up, you put gloves on them, you make them feel powerful, and then you send them off to war. And you're their person that's handing them their ammunition and their knowledge on how they're going to survive it, and you just become a beacon for them. So that's one of the things I love the most about the whole event.
All right. Well, I think we've talked way too much about Jake Paul, and I don't like it. So let's move on.
I'm not talking about Jake Paul. Okay. I hate him. I'm the anti-Jake Paul. So let's just be clear on that. We have to embrace
the numbers.
All right. Okay.
We have to embrace the numbers if we're going to save this thing.
All right. But let's move on to current events. After the success of last week's fight, Evander Holyfield calls out Mike Tyson in a press release and wants an exhibition bout with him. Jared, what do you think of this?
It's just you've got and here it's the same thing. You've got to call it something different. You can't just call this boxing and believe that Tyson's ready for the heavyweight champion. You can't, Anthony Joshua, you know what he would do to those two guys we saw in the ring? Like we do, but the general public doesn't. And you see it after every fight. People talking these crazy, wild things that come out that it makes it so obvious that the general public, I heard that. I heard that. Yeah. So I guess he still got 1 out of 2 of his ears, and he figures he can go one more. But once you run out of ears, it gets corny.
I don't know if success is the word I would use to describe this endeavor. Because then you have to really ask yourself what success means. Buster Douglas also, by the way, has called out Mike Tyson and wants in on that. I'll tell you what. How about if Jake Paul,
Jose Rivera?
If Jake Paul,
Facebook talking about it all the time.
If Jake Paul can beat a 60-year-old Buster Douglas, then let's talk. Jake Paul, give Buster Douglas a fight.
Can Mike make 190?
Hold on. The winner gets the winner of Tyson Holyfield, and then we decide who the greatest boxer of all time is. 4-man tournament. It's been decided.
You've just got to be decisive about the levels of the sport. There's levels here, and we've got to identify them, because this is going to get mixed up and people are going to get hurt. It's dangerous because for that average fan, the Nate Robinson, you shared a few memes, you slid a few jokes, you mentioned it at a party. Ha, 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 ha. For fighters, you're watching somebody who'd been knocked out twice, may have lost consciousness or had concussions or slight concussions twice already, had hit the canvas, didn't want to be there. We all knew he didn't want to be there. He was outclassed. The guy's skill level was better than him. It was sad. We wanted the fight to get stopped because we know what it takes to get to the level he was on and what happens when you're in there with somebody who's on a different level than you. And once you understand that, it makes it different for you. So we're watching it different. And the only way to get more people to understand that is to get more people involved.
All right.
This is how we're going to do it. This is how we save the sport.
I just don't want to see any more grandpa fights. I just don't.
Yeah, I'm not terribly
no. But all right, let's move on to some MMA. Breaking news as of yesterday: UFC and Yoel Romero have decided to part ways. Yoel still had 3 fights left on his contract, but his manager was able to get him out of his contract, and he still plans on fighting. Big loss for the UFC. But the biggest bit of MMA news, women's WBA, WBC, and IBF middleweight champion Claressa Shields signs a multi-year deal with PFL, Pro Fight League. That's an MMA organization. I think they go on ESPN2. They run a full season and playoff format. What do you think of this, Jared? What do you think of Claressa Shields coming to MMA?
It's proof of what I'm saying. You have to make it rewarding. We are animals. We're animals, and if it's not rewarding, we're not going to do it. Who do you want her to fight at 160? Give me a boxer, 160. Who's she fighting? Go. You guys, give me the list.
You're right.
Don't look it up. Give me the list. Yeah, me neither. So what's there for her if I'm her? I want the entertainment. I want the money. I want the fans. I want to do it while I'm young. Let's get it in. And this is the way to do it. Fight the people with the bigger names. Unless she wants to fight celebrities, this is the way to do it.
That might be more fun. You want to get beat up by a professional? Like some kind of sadomasochistic boxing? That might be fun. Claressa Shields will beat the living daylights out of you while you're I mean, come on.
Singing WAP.
This is sad. This is a money move right here, and I don't blame her. I mean, these again, you've got people who are risking their lives and their livelihoods every a couple times a year for $8,000.
And we want them to do it just to say they're the best. That's what we want the ultimate reward to be is, well, I'm the best fighter. Well, fine. She's got that. Hey, who's the best female fighter at 160? 5. I mean, can you name 5? It's crazy, dude. There's nothing out there for her. So it's going to, I expect people to do what's rewarding for them. I don't villainize the media. I don't villainize politicians. I try not to anyways. But I expect people to do what's rewarding for them and what's in their best interest. So this, as a boxing guy, yeah, it's sad. But at the same time, what else is there for her? This is what she has to do if she wants to get paid. I don't like it at all. I wish there are 100 other things I would rather see happen here than this. But
hey, she should fight Jake Paul. Bet you she'd knock his ass out.
I honest to God, I would be cool with that.
Hey, did
he
you
wants
see
to
the
fight
lunch-
Katie
did you
Taylor?
see the
I'd even
girl fight
I'd even go for that.
There was a sumo wrestler just fought a female.
Yes, I saw that.
Did you
Yes,
see that?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So how far off are we from if it's entertainment, I'll watch it? We're headed back to 3 guys versus a lion. It's been a long time, but it seems like we're headed back there. If it's the entertainment values there, we'll find a way to get it in. We'll work it out. And that's it. And that's why you institute a beginner's tier with very specific rules and open it up to everybody and say, yeah, it's dangerous, but there's levels to it. And we have very defined levels in the sport. And this is the way to save it. Yes, it's a problem, and it will swallow our sport if we don't embrace it. This thing you guys will be more and more and more frustrated about this as weeks go on, I promise you, because this thing is going to take over. If it isn't embraced as part of boxing, it will take over boxing. You said you've seen celebrity boxing. What year were you watching it, and what year was it from? And why are people still infatuated with Screech beating up Horseshack? Riddle me that.
I want to watch one of them get knocked out.
Well,
that's it.
NASCAR
that's
for
my
the
reason.
crashes. That's where we are, man.
I always wanted Zach Morris to punch Screech in the face, and since I can't get that, I guess I'll have to have Horseshack from Welcome Back, Kotter.
Hey, Kelly, Lisa, Jesse Spano, if you guys want to train for a couple weeks, and then I'll match you guys up. I'll figure out what the best matchup is. I don't know if you guys are still in the same weight classes, whatever, but just let you know I'm available at Scraps.
Mario Lopez is actually a decent boxer. He trains.
Yeah.
So, but with this announcement of Claressa
real quick,
Shields.
time out. I met a plumber last year. Guy owned his own plumbing business. He's been in the plumbing business for 30 years. Good friend of mine, one of the top home inspectors in Connecticut, was looking at some of this guy's work, and he pointed out a lot of problems. And I said, this guy's been a plumber for 30 years. And the guy looked at me and he said, not a very good one. Doing something for a long time doesn't necessarily mean you're good at it. It means you got dedication like nobody's business. It's not reflective of your skill set. It just isn't. This sport, I love these sports. These sports got to figure this thing out. They got to figure this out.
You've been picking NFL winners and fantasy football teams for a long time, Joe.
All right. Let's move on. With this announcement of Claressa Shields switching lanes to MMA, that brings up the who you got. And Amanda Nunes has been the dominant force in female mixed martial arts. But who inside or outside of the UFC has the best chance of dethroning her, Jared?
I'm gonna momentarily pass off to Joe because I pass to you two because I believe there is a right answer. I believe there's a correct answer and a runner-up, and I want to see if I hear. So go ahead, Joe.
Well, Sarah Connor from the Terminator movies should be revived and put in the ring with Amanda. No, all jokes aside, look, Valentina Shevchenko is the only person Amanda Nunes is trying to avoid. 2 close fights. I would say most definitely Shevchenko won the second one. And that's not to say if they fought a third time that Nunes couldn't escape again by the skin of her teeth. I would think third time's the charm. But Nunes is never going to give her that fight. Why would you? There's nothing in it for you at all there. So, can Claressa Shields, get some? My only concern is by the time I think Shields gets around to becoming somebody who could be a legit threat, I think Nunes has probably moved on from the sport. Yeah. So currently in or around, I don't.
Heather Hardy beat everybody in her weight class in boxing. The last one was Shelly Vincent. Great fight. And tried to cross over to MMA, and I mean she got beat up. Heather Hardy, great boxer, was at the, and you're right, man. It takes a long time to learn this stuff, and Shields, it's going to take her forever. She's not going to be competitive with the best in the game. She would lose that fight by a lot. There are levels to this too.
And I think, look, especially in the women's game, if you don't have a ground game, if you're not an all-around fighter in women's MMA, I mean, you're just not going to be able to sustain enough of. You just won't win enough. It just won't happen. You'll find yourself constantly in matchup problems. So when you're a woman in MMA, I mean, you've got to be super well-rounded. And for somebody to come in from boxing, who and we know how good Holly Holmes is, but
James Toney, that's what you're going to get here.
Yeah, exactly. So,
see, I know.
Okay, Circle gets a square with Shevchenko. Do you want to give me one more name at the only other answer I was going to accept?
I got you. Hold on, let me give my answer.
Oh.
Now, I don't think Claressa Shields is that far off. That's not my answer.
Thank you.
She's been training with Chris Cyborg for a while now. So I expect her to learn some tips and tricks from that. But my answer is also in PFL. And since they aren't having a season, she went and fought in Invicta. And that is Kayla Harris, the Olympian judoka from New Jersey. Kayla Harris, she's a beast. She started off at 155 and then realized, hey, if I want to go somewhere in MMA, I have to get down to 145. She did that in her last fight. She smashes people, and I think she is the best bet for Amanda Nunes. I think I know Amanda Nunes has a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but we haven't really seen Amanda Nunes go to the ground. I think Kayla Harrison can get her to the ground, beat the crap out of her. And I think Kayla Harrison's the best chance.
She did an Impractical Jokers episode, too.
She did.
Yeah, I like her.
Yes,
you know what? And I didn't think I was going to get another acceptable answer, but I'm gonna take both of those. I'm okay with both of those. The biggest problem I have with this question is all of the people I can find that I actually believe that about are on her hit list. Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, Holm, Cyborg, Shevchenko. She beat all 5. So Shevchenko obviously gave her the biggest fight. Easy to say that might be the best matchup for her. But I went back through her 4 losses. Thinking styles make fights. Maybe you find somebody there that's a good matchup for her. Alexis Davis is still on the UFC roster. She lost 3 straight in 5 of her last 8. I think that was a fluke. Sarah Diallo, this was one of her first fights. Nunes, she won 4 of her last 5, and her last fight was a loss to Roxanne Modafferi in May of 2017. Anna Marie India, 5-5. Her last fight was 2014. Both Sarah and Anna, oddly enough, lost a fight, then beat Nunes, then lost 3 straight. That's 2 of her losses. The last loss just came back after almost 2-year layoff to win in September at Bellator 245, Kat Zingano. And that's my pick. That's the last person, the last still relevant person that beat Nunes. Styles make fights, maybe. I don't like any of the people on any of these lists. I don't think Harrison's ready. I think Shevchenko is naturally just a few pounds smaller. And I think Zingano gets beat, so I don't like any of the 3. I'll take Shevchenko if I have to pick one, and those are probably the only 3 I like. But yeah, most of them, they're already there. Rousey, Tate, Holm, Cyborg, Shevchenko. She already beat them.
Yeah, I mean, I've joked on this show, like, Amanda Nunes needs to fight, like, TJ Dillashaw before she actually gets a real test.
Would she win a boxing match with Jake Paul?
Yes.
I would pay top dollar to watch Amanda Nunes and Jake Paul fight.
Yeah. Jake Paul's also talked about MMA before because he wrestled in high school.
Well, did you notice too? He said in his comment you posted earlier, in your comment he posted earlier, just so everyone's clear, he said his team is calling Dana White. It didn't say Dana's been calling me. It don't say Dana's been calling me, asking me if I'm around. So I think people that really know the sport aren't taking this clown too seriously. You gotta earn your way in this sport. This is an earn your way sport. Pick a good fight. Pick a good fight. Pick a real opponent. Beat him, and let's talk.
But the people that don't know, the people that still think Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather was a great fight, will buy this. And so Jake Paul's taking this as a winnable strategy. Again, he's doing something rewarding for him. I could box some MMA guys and get rounds in.
Yeah, but listen, here's how promoting works.
Really bad boxers.
Here's how promoting works. I mean, I spent 20 years in the radio business. You don't pick the music we play. We tell you what you like, and you acquiesce. That's why top 40 stations, when they play the same song every hour on the hour, they're just beating that into your head. You're like, God, I hate this song. But then you're sitting at your desk later at work, and you're like, this is crazy.
But you're talking about the artists.
I mean, that's what happens.
Not the listeners. You're not comparing artists to listeners.
You
go back to the boxer as the artist now.
You serve up
the music.
You serve up your stuff to the people, and you see what they like, and you give them what you think they like.
And they like Jake Paul.
But I'm telling you, if you package things up better and you were promoting the actual fighters, if let's say Errol Spence was fighting Bud Crawford, let's say that you got the fights that people really want to see. Maybe Canelo's like, you know what? I will fight Triple G again. Fights that we want. There's fights that we've been asking for years from a lot of these people. Again, the idea of whether Manny Pacquiao can fight Conor McGregor, I love Manny Pacquiao, and I like Conor. To watch them fight does nothing for me. I don't even know what exactly that. Are they going to box? That's stupid too. Conor, you're not a boxer. We already saw that. But you want to try? Are we going to keep trying to find older and older boxers until Conor can beat one? Is Muhammad Ali still alive? Maybe he can go. I mean, give me a break with this crap. There's got to be an end to it. Jared, I love what you do, and I like what you're doing. This nonsense, though, where again, dude, can you imagine if at the home run derby in Major League Baseball this year, they're like, listen, the main competition tonight is Mike Trout and Aaron Judge and I don't know. I mean, just some rando TikTok kid.
It couldn't be.
You know what? And they're like, listen, this kid he played high school baseball. He's pretty good. I'm sorry.
Joe,
I love and respect these sports too much.
There's angels in the outfield.
I know my place.
That could be rookie of the year.
I know my place, and I want everyone else to know theirs. You don't belong in the profession. You don't belong fighting professionals. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. If you're a stupid person and you come on my politics show and you're not armed with facts, I can promise you I'll dismantle and humiliate you and your family.
Joe, so
that will happen because that's my wheelhouse. If you come to my, I will destroy you. But I'm not going to go into your gym and be like, Jared, you and me, let's go, because I know that's your domain.
So on the radio,
but respect it.
So on the radio, I fully respect what you do, but on the radio, if you play music less people want to hear, less people will listen, your ratings will be lower, right? You've got to play the music the people want to hear
but you also have to tell them. You also have to direct them towards the music you want them to hear. You can't let them lead. I talk about American Idol all the time. Does anybody think that you picked the American Idol? You really think there was about 20 people investing millions of dollars in that show? You think your vote? Come on. You think your vote really had anything to do with who they were pushing and promoting on that? If you think that, you're all fooling yourself. The entertainment business brings in billions and billions of dollars. They're very careful in who they select and what they do. Good for Jake Paul, dude.
Taking over boxing.
Jake Paul. But don't tell me you're a good boxer because you're not. Don't tell me you belong in a ring with professionals because you don't.
No. Yeah. True.
Vince McMahon, when asked about helping start up the UFC, helping to what's what I'm looking for? Give money to help start up the UFC. Sponsor the UFC. Yes. He said no, because you can't control the storyline if you can't control the champions. That's entertainment. When it's actual fighting between a champion for a belt, and you actually have to go through and fight and get ready and go through the whole process, that's a sport. And what Jake Paul's trying to do, that's entertainment. Go to WWE. I like WWE. I like UFC. I like boxing. But I respect the other sides.
That's 27-0. And we bring him up, and he's getting his title fight against another guy that's 22-0. And we think 27-0 means 27-0. The fight is tonight. I wish I could remember the two guys in the fight. But 27-0, we look at it and we think the guy can fight, and he can't. We're not controlling the narrative. Katie Taylor, her last fight, we're not controlling the narrative by throwing a belt on the other girl's shoulder. Yeah,
then Jake Paul needs to put in the work and get the
trying to beef your sport up is a good thing. Trying to get those again. Look, if WWE had been real, MMA wouldn't exist because there wouldn't have been a need for it. If wrestling had been a real thing and they were really, really, really doing that stuff, and I understand to a certain degree, I'm putting you through a table that still has to hurt, but if that was 100% real, MMA wouldn't exist because we wouldn't have needed it. Boxing would have taken care of the fist fighting. Wrestling would have taken care of everything else. MMA wouldn't have had a place. But the fact is, we actually wanted to see guys get elbowed in the face and watch their head actually split open, and not from a razor blade, but from an actual elbow. I love watching guys get. My favorite thing in the world to watch is John Jones cracking your whole splitting open. I love that.
Really?
I love that. I hate sliced skin. I have a phobia about skin slices. A paper cut, I'd rather get shot than get a paper cut. But I love that. That's what I'm watching it for. There's those uniforms. There's those moments in these fights that I just find absolutely fascinating. It's the professionalism. It's the idea that Khabib, in the middle of the Gaethje fight, decided, nah, don't break his arm. His family's watching. I'll just choke him out. That's the kind of sport I want to be in, where a guy could be that good to have like that kind of thought. You ever wonder what Michael Jordan thought about during basketball games? Probably not basketball. I don't think that guy had to think about hoops. He was worried thinking about McDonald's and Nike and stuff. You know what I mean? Professionals should be doing it professionally. And if you want to also do it, you can. But not at a professional level. It makes a mockery of what professionalism is. We live in a country already, right, where people, doctors and scientists, what do they know? It's just their opinion. Because the 8 years of medical school and the 20 years of residencies, you don't know anything about that. You don't know anything about that. And you're like, I could just go in there and I could probably find a cure for again. People say stuff and they don't know. And as long as we allow them to live in this disillusionment, you don't have a better world. You don't have a better sport.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
Like I said, I got friends that think they could tackle Gronk, that think they could score on Steph Curry, and think they could hold Kyrie Irving to 20 points in a quarter. That's just not true. In the middle of Ronda Rousey mania, I'll never forget this. I was at ESPN and Rob Dibble on air said that he thought Ronda could give him a fight, but that he would beat her. And I said, Rob, she would rip your arm off and then beat you to death with it. You are out of your mind. He's like, I'm 6'4", 270. I said, she will put you in an arm bar instantly and snap your arm off and then hand it to you. And what are you talking about?
You couldn't tell him. You would have had to show him. I can show you better than I can tell you. There's a scraps gym right up the street. That's how that conversation should go. You can't tell because you can't tell him. That's how scraps started. When I did the origin story, you can't tell him. It's like, hey, you know that 150-pound dude you're picking on, we'll give you a fair one. And you won't be able to punch him. because you're 290 and don't move around really well. That's exactly what happened. That's where it came from. You know, glove up. They're right there. It changes conversations. It doesn't go that same way. I'll beat any. You think if Canelo was standing right there with his wrist wrapped up, that conversation go the same way? Or does it happen on Twitter? I love Gary Owen. This dude's a comedian. And he's like, man, I almost got messed up the other day. Somebody jacked me up against the wall, and how I got out of the fight, I stopped making eye contact and just agree with everything he said. He said, I'm going to mess you up. He said, I say, you probably will. He said, you act like you're scared. I said, nobody's acting here. And then I went home. I got on a plane. I flew home. I wasn't in the state of Michigan. I wasn't in the city of Detroit. I got home. I'm on my Twitter. I said, somebody almost got these hands last night.
I've been punched in the face by 4 people in my lifetime. One of those people is Joe Frazier. And I will never stand in front of a boxing champion and say, hey, champ, you still got it, because I mean, I don't know why Joe Frazier punched me in the mouth. I don't know if it was reactionary or if he didn't like what I said, but yes.
What?
I told you that story. Joe Frazier punched me in the face.
No.
I was at a car dealership with Joe Frazier. We were doing a radio promotion. And they were like, hey, guys. And they start taking pictures. And so, you know, he's a fighter. He does the fight pose. And I'm standing there like an idiot. And I was like, I put my hands up and I turned towards him and I said, champ, still got it? Because that's what you do in those, right? And he just took his left and he went boom. And he hit me right in my face. like hard.
Yes.
I told my brother that story the other day, and he was like, yeah, he kind of like, I go, no. I'm like, he like snapped his fist off into my face. It really hurt. I mean, he wasn't, if he was playing around like he's like that big, like, I don't know my own strength, that kind of guy. Or he intentionally threw a left and caught me right here in my face.
That's great.
I will never, ever, Jared, stand face to face with a heavyweight champion and say, you still got it, because I know what's going to happen now. I'm not stupid. Yeah. Or I'll ask like this next time. So, you still got it, champ? I'm in the turtle shell. Yeah, I'm not stupid.
Not
listen,
that I'm curious personally.
We started this show off talking about Anthony Smith and a robber going into his house, and Anthony Smith, you know, basically taking that guy the distance. That's a problem. You know, I mean, are former wrestlers going to just start showing up at MMA guys' houses now to look for fights? I mean, what's next? What's next is all I ask.
Yeah. And Jared, I like what you're saying.
3 guys versus a lion is the answer to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, dude. I was just going to say that.
But I like where you're going with this, Jared. You keep bringing up scrub scraps, and yeah, it's a great idea. If 2 people, someone's talking crap, to go figure it out, get organized and do it. But then when you have 2 guys who don't know what they're doing fighting on the same card as 2 of the greatest fighters of all time, and people are talking about a YouTuber, that's where the delusions start. That's where that's why he thinks these were 2 of the greatest fighters of all time, but they're talking about me. So maybe I can go fight Floyd Mayweather, who is also known as one of the greatest fighters of all time. Maybe I can go fight Canelo Alvarez. So you need to have them separated.
Tyson didn't knock out his opponent. I did. I guess I'm better than Tyson.
Yeah. There's levels. Yeah. When we need them seriously defined for the layman's that follow the sport, for sure.
All right. Now let's get into a preview of tonight's fights. Starting off with UFC middleweight matchup. Number 4 ranked Jack Hermansson versus number 13 ranked Marvin Vettori. Jack Hermansson, I think, is another guy like Anthony Smith. He's a gatekeeper in the middleweight division. Maybe if you beat him, you can get at Adesanya, but probably not. Well, maybe now that Yo Romero's not there. But, yeah, he's just a stepping stone to the top, and Marvin Vettori, good up and comer. He was Adesanya's first fight in the UFC, and now he's come back after that loss, getting in the top 15. Jared, how do you see this fight going?
I like Hermansson, I think, to win. I'm not terribly invested in either one of these careers, I have to be honest. They're not neither one of them does anything that really knocks my socks off, personally. So yeah, I think Hermansson's, I think they're well ranked. This is 4 versus 13. Don't expect a lot of fireworks, but yeah, I like Jack.
This is an interesting situation because Hermansson was supposed to fight initially Darren Till, then it turned into Kevin Holland, and he was favored in both of those fights. Now that it's Marvin Vettori, Jack finds himself the underdog going into this fight. And I'll tell you what, Hermansson, I think is a pretty decent fighter. 11 KOs, 6 submissions, 4 decisions. I like guys that can do it any which way. But how his last fight he submitted Kevin Gastelum, but also got knocked out last year by Jared Cannonier. Got a knockout loss to Thiago Santos. So
was doing well in those fights.
He's one of those guys who I feel like he's right near like 4. I feel like he's kind of peaking at this point. Meanwhile, the Italian dream, Marvin Vettori is from Italy, and actually, when he first got into MMA, had to go to 6 different gyms to be able to get all of the things that he needed. That's the kind of dedication you're looking for from a fighter. Now, he's called the Italian dream. He's got a unanimous decision over Cesar Ferreira in his last fight, which is notable because he submitted Hermansson when they fought. And Vettori's got a much better submission game. 9 of his 15 wins are chokeouts. His only other notable fight, by the way, if you remember the name Marvin Vettori, it's because he fought a 3-round split decision with Israel Adesanya. Mm-hmm. Had that fight gone 5, I have to say this, and I believe this 100%. Vettori would have beaten Israel Adesanya. Watch the fight if you haven't. He did everything I've been saying every time the style every time he fights, and I tell you what you need to do to beat him. Vettori did it. If the fight had been 5 rounds, not 3, I swear to God, Vettori would have beat Adesanya, and we'd be having a different conversation about his new opponent. It literally is one of those situations where that guy just ran out of time. I've never seen Israel Adesanya as dominated in a fight as I did against Marvin Vettori. And he's had some issues since. There was a drug suspension in there for him. He seems like he's got the ship rightened. This is a great fight for him. Again, I think if you're Jack Hermansson, where are you going from here? It's the big boys at the top, and you've already proven you really can't hang with those guys. Yeah. So you want Vettori to win this fight because I think this guy is a guy that can make some noise. He's a guy that could ultimately keep Adesanya in the division. I see a rematch with these two down the line. And I'll tell you what, and this struck me when the fight ended, 29-28 Adesanya, 29-28 Vettori, 29-28 Adesanya. And I'll tell you what, the look on Vettori's face told me, I know I won that fight. He's a really good fighter. I'm not sure Hermansson is good enough to be at that level. I think it's why he's not favored in this fight, and I don't think he's going to win it.
Yeah, I like Vettori. He's a solid up-and-comer. I'm very interested to see him take this fight. I want him to get the win just to add some new blood into that middleweight division because I do want to see a rematch. But I don't know. Hermansson's tough. I'll go with Vettori because that's what I want, but
I think the smart money doesn't bet on this fight, to be honest.
Yes, I like that. That's a good way to put it. But now let's move on to the big fight this weekend, the big boxing match, the welterweight battle between Danny Garcia and Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. coming off a big win in his last fight, but he also got into a car accident. Luckily, he's fully recovered from that. Jared, what do you expect from this fight?
Oh, man, I expect it to be a great fight. I expect it to go the distance. I don't think either one of them has shown me something that says they can beat the other. So I think the smart money here is the prop bet of going the distance. And I want so badly to say Danny Garcia is going to upset Errol Spence. I really, really want to. It's like I'm 51-49 Errol Spence if I had to bet, but because of the odds, man, if I had to put a couple bucks on one or the other, I like Danny here. And draw. I know the numbers are good for a draw too. That's the type of fight I think you're gonna have. If you get anything past 2 or 3 points one way or the other, I'm gonna be really surprised if this is a dominant victory for either guy or a knockout. I think it goes the distance and it's close.
I think the subtitle of this week's episode should be Gatekeeper. And I'll tell you why. I like Garcia. Got some great wins. Amir Khan, Eric Morales, a shop warden, Zab Judah. Lost to Keith Thurman. He lost to Sean Porter. He did win his last 2 fights, so he comes in here on a winning streak. But again, let's be honest. I think you're talking about an elite fighter and a really good fighter, and usually elite fighters win those. And when they don't, we talk about it for the rest of time. And that's sort of how I see this. I think Spence is just gonna. I mean, Spence likes to go to the body. I think he's gonna spend the first part of this fight beating Garcia's body, and so that you get into the later rounds and Garcia's hands start to dip, and then I think he's going to start teeing off on Garcia's face. I agree, Jared. I don't think Spence is going to knock him out. Maybe you get an 11th or 12th round stoppage because maybe he's just beating the daylights out of him, but I think it goes the distance. I think Spence wins a unanimous decision.
He struggled a little bit with Porter, and I think Danny's probably the fastest guy he's ever seen.
If you can't beat sloppy guys like Porter, you're not beating Errol Spence. You're not beating Bud. You're not beating you're just not. And again, I love Danny Garcia.
This is stylistic. I agree with you. All those guys should beat Danny Garcia, but if he can be one of them, it's Spence. Stylistically, this is a good matchup for Danny.
Can I give you a statistic that's shocking? Garcia, when he's sustaining body work, his accuracy drops to 25%. That's shocking. That's a shocking number to hear. You start hitting that guy about the body, working him over, and Garcia becomes literally a quarter of the fighter he normally is. And I just think the way Spence fights, Spence loves teeing off on the body. Garcia, to me, this doesn't bode well for Garcia at all. His whole fighting style has never really done it for me. I think he's a solid fighter, but I think he gets easily outclassed here, as most guys would in this situation.
I agree with you, Joe. My brain is saying to go with Errol Spence, but my heart is vain. So I'm going to go with the man I share a last name with, my long-lost cousin, Danny Garcia. Because that's just how I pick fights.
I have no problem with that. That's
Joe, he's always on stuff like that. In NFL, he's consistently better. I don't know how.
You know what it is? I love him but he is. He's a passion picker. And it throws you off because the
especially
passion
with his
pick
nose.
is the passion. Yeah, the passion pick is always like you're like, oh, dude, come on. All the other picks he generally makes are right in where you would expect a good pick to be. So. It's the fact that Jace sometimes, because he has love in his heart for certain people and things, where he again, dude, he's in second place in our pick'ems, and he would be in first if he hadn't picked the Giants in every single game this year, knowing that he's even behind the other guy by a couple of games. He still picks the Giants.
Has to.
Yeah.
I do it too.
That's loyalty and passion. You got to respect that.
Your heart, not your brain.
You don't bet with that guy, though. Don't let that guy tell you how to bet. But you gotta respect it.
I do have a friend of mine. He's serving in Kuwait in the Air Force. He sends me $10 for my best college football picks. I give him the best ones I have. But then I do say, hey, this is a passion pick. Like this week with BYU, 10 points. I'm like, this is my heart right here. I'm not going to advise you to take this, but this is what I think will happen because I'm going with my heart at BYU. So just let you know.
Nobody take that bet. Nobody do it. Trust me. Don't do it. It's a passion pick. He's being honest there.
Hey, sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But all right. And that will do it for previews of this week's fights. We're going to end the show like we always do. And Jared, hit us with that flurry.
I got 3 scrub scrap stories. If we haven't spoken enough today about the levels in boxing, I want to cover it just one more time as it relates to scrub scraps, the beginners tier, and USA Boxing, the amateurs tier. The first, Scrub Scraps is a beginner's program, so it's intended to make safer, more available version for anybody to try boxing before becoming an amateur boxer. Story number 1. Easily one of the top 5 guys to ever fight at Scrub Scraps, 6'2", 200 pounds, 7-0 record. When he came to the USA Boxing gym with me, he lasted 3 rounds with the other guy. The first 2 rounds were close. I'd have given them to him, but only by a little bit, and he was my guy. I thought the other guy was a little bit stronger, and he used his jab a little bit better. But he got rocked in the 3rd round, and hard. And I jumped in, stopped it, gave him a minute to recover. He did end up finishing the round, but if you'd scored it, he wouldn't have gotten any better than a draw. And it was a little better than a standing 8 count. Story number 2, 6 feet tall, 220 pounds, 4-2-1 at Scrub Scraps, wildly athletic for his size. Seems to have a bum knee, act up every time he tries to do something athletic, though. Brought him to the USA Boxing gym, and he didn't last a single round with the other guy. I don't think it was 90 seconds. Both of those first 2 guys are currently 2 of my very best friends. Story number 3, guy's 5'11", 245 pounds. He was 2-1-1 at Scrub Scraps, a recovering addict, found a really safe space to exercise some of his stuff. At Scrub Scraps, he relapsed. His life fell apart after Scrub Scraps was shut down. He's currently in prison. But when I brought him to the gym, he also didn't last a single round with the other kid at the USA Boxing gym. So these are 3 of Scrub Scraps' very best fighters. All of them full-grown men, mid-20s to mid-30s, 200 pounds or better, 6 feet or better. Experienced boxing with me for years, practicing several times a week. And when I brought them to the gym and we paired them up against their most competitive partner at the USA Boxing Amateur Gym, all 3 sparring sessions needed to be stopped early because I feared for their safety. There's only one more part to this story. When I brought them to the gym, those 3 guys, it was all on the same day. And they all fought the same kid. A 15-year-old, 5'9", 185-pound kid who would go 0-5 as an amateur boxer over the next 2 years. 0-5. 15-year-old. The smallest and shortest of the bunch. And my best guys couldn't last a round. There are very, very strong levels to this, and that not only tells us why we need Scrub Scraps, but also that if we go too far toward entertaining people, that we're putting lives in danger, that there is real jeopardy and real danger, and we should fear that. When I run a beginner's tier, And 3 guys I've trained for years, 3 of my best heavyweights, come in and all lose in the same day to a 15-year-old that hadn't started his amateur boxing career but would lose his first 5 fights. There's a problem. We need to sew up those levels and make sure that people stay in their lane and don't get hurt. Thanks, guys. You're muted again.
Thank you. There's levels to this game. There's gatekeepers, entertainment versus the sport. We have a lot of themes going through this episode. Thank you for those stories, Jared. And thank you all for listening and watching Throwing Jabs. This is brought to you by CMG Sports. This is a CMG Sports presentation. Make sure you go to clovercrestmedia.com to check out one of the 30 different podcasts. Not just sports. There's other stuff there too. You can also, we talked a lot about WWE. Make sure you check out the Hard Hitting Wrestling Show where we had special guest Leo Rush, formerly of the WWE, on the show. So make sure you check that out if you are a wrestling fan. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Jared, for joining me. Thank you guys all for watching. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Enjoy the fights tonight, and we hope to see you next time. Take care.